Hello everybody. So, the fly I'm going to tie is from Colours in the Current by Joe Cordeiro, and I'll put the materials in the description, but I'm going to do a bit of a follow through with the book. I use this book for quite a lot of my inspirations on my flatwings, but I'm going to tie the flat Mack, which is a mackerel pattern. It's the first time I've ever tied it. I've never tied this fly before, but I've got all the materials together, and I'm just gonna go through it so we can go through it sort of together, and then see how we get on. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my hook. It says the threads that you can use, the hooks that you can use. It says Joe quotes an eagle claw, but I've got an Arex SA270 Bluewater in a 4/0. I've got some neck cape in white. This is like a dry fly mini pack, but I like the bigger ones for the flatwings because they act as like a support. So we'll get tying, and we'll just go through the steps as I go. So the thread I'm using is just a GSP thread, similar to a 50 denier. So I'm just going to wrap that towards the shank, towards the barb of the hook, and the first thing it asks for is some white bucktail. Now, white bucktail comes in all sorts of different lengths and sizes. For the tail, I like to use this stuff because it doesn't flare as much, and you're not wasting some of the good stuff which is sort of down here. So I'll take a small piece. The book asks for a matchstick's width, so you can sort of judge that. You can sort of judge a matchstick. So we're just going to tie that in. What I do is I grab it about halfway down and peel out some of the shorter ones. Then that creates unnecessary bulk in the tail. We want this as sparse as we can get it. There we go. And I'm just going to square off the butts and then tie that in. There we go. There we go, and then just going to pull down nice and tight on that. So that's the support for the bucktail. Next, place your white feather cape concave side up on the shank. Add wraps forward, securing in place. So let's pick a nice concaved feather, and this is going to be quite long, this fly, so we don't want the support to be too small. So I've got so when it says concave, it's going to go that way up. So for the natural curvature, I'm going to strip some of this marabou type stuff away and just kind of work the fibres down and tie that concaved up on top of the shank with a few securing wraps, and then tie forward. There we go. So that's concaved up. I'm going to snip off the excess of the stem and just wrap over them. Just neatening everything up. And then I'm going to add a drop of super glue just to seal it all in place. There we go. So the first flatwing, it asks for a pillow. Now I'll go through what a pillow actually is, but it asks for a first flatwing. It's going to be white. So I've got myself a white Ewing feather cape. saddle, sorry, there. You can get flatwing from Flatwing feathers, but these are perfectly adequate for the length and webbiness that you need. So I'm going to pick a nice feather flatwing. It doesn't need to be too long because it says we're going to build the length as we go, so the first one needs to be as long as the neck. So I'm going to take got one there, which is a nice one. You can build your pillow out of the marabou stuff, or to personalise it a little bit, you can just add a little bit of Angelina fibre, if I can actually pick it up and dub it on. It doesn't need to be massive. And this is just going to sort of prop your feather up a bit. There you go. Doesn't need to be massive. So that's the pillow done. And then the first white flatwing, and they want to be concave down, so you can sort of look at where the concave is. And then we're going to tie that concave down. So just pinch and make a nice tie-in section there. There we go. And trim off the excess. So flash, it says 4 to 6 strands of gold flash. So I've got the Crafty Fly gold. I think this is actually a soft copper because I couldn't find any gold. I think it might be on my flash stand, but I've just got this instead. So 4 to 6 strands of gold. So I'm just going to take four to 6 strands of the gold. Flash. Check the length. Again, it's going to be quite long anyway. Probably over the end of the vise, and tie that down, and then just tie sort of the excess back. That's just my way of doing it. There we go. Second feather, a yellow. Oh, I do have a yellow somewhere. There we go, got a yellow. So sometimes I buy the full saddles, other times I just buy these woolly bugger packs because they've got the perfect amount of feathers and flatwing style feathers in. So I'll just show you one with a nice nice taper to them. So it says second feather is going to be yellow. So I'm just going to offer it up and just going to try and make it a little bit longer than that white, because that's all we want. Even if it's a couple of mil every time, longer than the next one, longer than the one before. We know that we're sticking to the sort of recipe. So then we're going to tie that down on top of that. There we go. And I'm going to again add a bit of glue. and just trim down and then just tidy everything up. Ah, bless me. Right, so yellow's done. Second feather yellow, 4 to 6 strands of red flash. So again, Crafty fly, fiery red I've got here. You can use flat flash, like Flashaboo. I like this polar style flash myself. Gives it a nice, it's got like a nice micro crinkle to it. So I'm going to use 4 to 6 strands of red, and then it's already pretty tapered as it is, so I'm just going to do the exact same again. Doesn't have to be too neat, and then tie that in a couple, and then just wrap any excess back just for a bit of, you can trim it off, you don't need to, you can do whatever you want with it. So third is American Beauty. Now I don't have American Beauty, which is a little bit like a ruby purpley type colour, but I've got a deep purple colour. Well, that is a very dark purple, isn't it? Or I've got like a pinky type colour. So I might use the purple. Purple seems a bit more mackerel-y to me. So I'm going to use the purple and make it a bit more darker than the original recipe. So this is a Grizzly purple, as you can see it under the light. So I think this one might work quite well. So let's have a look. Let's have a look. There we go, there's a nice one. And again, it's got a nice taper to it. Just going to trim off the ends, offer it up, make sure it's just that little bit longer. Just make sure it's that little bit longer at the back on top. There we go. And then just come a couple of loose wraps over the top and just sort of build up. There we go. Perfect. Again, dab of glue. Dab of glue, then trim off the excess. And then it asks for 4 to 6 strands of purple flash. So you've probably guessed it, I've got Crafty Fly's deep purple colour. There we go. So 4 to 6 strands of purple flash. Snip it off at full length. I don't like these, you see some people snipping off down here when they only need 6 inches. This is a full 12-inch hang. So always snip off and fold over, or snip off and bin the excess. I don't like these people. I don't like the people. I don't like it when people snip off half a hank. I think it's a massive waste. So I'm going to tie that in directly on top and fold that right over again. There we go. That's the purple in. So 4th feather white, 5th feather a webby grizzly blue colour. Ooh. 6th feather Chartreuse grizzly. Wow, so there's quite a lot of feathers involved in this. This is the proper flatwing. So where are we at? So we've done purple, yeah, 4th feather. So this will be our 4th feather now. Is going to be another white, and then 5th is the grizzly blue. So let's have a look at a white one. Absolutely loads here to choose from. I don't want one too long because I don't want to have to trim it down and then waste a lot of feather. So I've picked one with a nice length there. That's a nice one. So a lot of this marabou that you don't need, so you just take it off until it gets to the solid barbules. There we go. Perfect. And then just again loose wraps, and then just so you can manipulate the feather once it's on top of the shank. Because we want it sitting nice and flat. There we go. And again, blob of super glue just to keep it all nice and flat, stops it twisting once it's all tied in. What was the next one? A grizzly blue colour. So blue grizzly. So I've got a blue grizzly Ewing saddle. This is a Doctor blue. I've got another blue which is like a bleached and dyed blue, but I prefer this blue because that's like proper mackerel-y colours, that, isn't it? Proper mackerel style. So let's try and find one that's nice and long, and it's gonna fit well over the white. There we go. I think I've got one. There. It's looking pretty good. So again, strip off all the marabou. And then offer that up and tie that down as neat as you can. There we go. It's getting built up quite nice, this. Again, blob of super glue before we go in with some flash. And we're going to go in with some blue flash. So I've got some shallow blue sea flash from Crafty again. This is quite a light blue. So a few strands of this, 4 to 6 it says in the book. So let's do 6. That's about 6, I think. So that to be perfect. You can add as much flash or as little flash as you want. But I'm trying to stick to the original recipe here. And it's just something a little bit different. You see quite a lot of these fly tyers that are developing their own flies, which is, some of them are absolutely unbelievable. And I do my own, but sometimes it's just nice to pay a little bit of tribute as to where you get your inspiration from. So 4 to 6 strands of blue, 6 feather Chartreuse Grizzly. 6th, I think this is the final one, I think. No, it's not. Wow. Right, so I've got saltwater pack. I'm pretty sure I've got full saddle somewhere. No, I'll just use this. Saltwater streamer in Chartreuse Grizzly. These little saltwater packs, you can get them from Deer Creek and Kindale and a few other places in the UK now. But these are absolutely perfect for your saltwater patterns if you're not tying loads and you don't want to fork out for a big full size saddle. The length on these is absolutely perfect. Yeah, you're not going to get much better than a 10-inch feather on a saltwater streamer pack. So yeah, some of them are absolutely perfect. I'm going to come right over the back with that one. It's going to be quite long. Without it being too long that it's sticking out on its own. You just kind of want it to blend in and taper off a bit. So trim off the excess, and that's alright, I think that's good. There we go. Nope, I don't like it. It's sat up on an angle, so I've got a trick. I've got a trick for when it does that and it's not behaving itself, so I'm just going to unwind that. And this is a trick I learned off Giovanni de Pace fly tying, where we just manipulate the fibres to all point down the way, and just put a little blob of UV resin, and then just dab it with your fingers and then set it. There we go. So now that's set. That's now going to sit perfectly on top of the shank, he says. There we go. That's better. So that's sat nicely on top of the shank. Much better. That's just a trick to get it up sit flat. Get it helping sitting nice and flat. So each one place concave down, shortest to longest. Yep, we've said that. The first feather is just the length of the neck support, taper the length and gets longer to the last feather, which is exactly what we've done. Okay, so the body, tie in Bill's body braid just above the point of the hook on the shank, which is exactly where we've come to, just above the point of the hook. It says the body braid is to be purple, but I don't have body braid because I never use it. So I'm going to show you a trick. And it says take the wraps of the body braid forward just before the eye of the hook. Right, so trick, if you don't have body braid, which not a lot of people do unless you're a salmon fly tyer, so we're just going to use the flash that we used before. I'm going to take sort of 4 strands, and you'll get the same effect. So what we'll do is we'll tie it in on the side of the shank, and we'll wrap all the way down to the eye of the hook. Okay, so then we'll put a little bit of super glue down, and granted you won't get that, your body will be a little bit thinner than if you were to use body braid, but it's not the end of the world. And then just start wrapping. And come back over yourself a little bit, and then work your way back down. And that super glue, as you go down, that super glue will all soak in. There you go. That'll about do it. So you've essentially wrapped. You can twist it if you want. I've just kept it flat, and you can sort of, it's almost like a braid that you've done yourself anyway. So we've done that. Underbody, roll the fly upside down like that. Grab a matchstick width of bucktail and cut it at an angle, and just tie behind the eye of the hook and make sure it's as long as the support. So we need to see where the support is. That's fine, we're happy to do that. Where's my bucktail gone? I normally use a couple of different bucktails depending on the sparsity of the fly and everything that goes with it. So I'm just going to check out the bucktail that I've got, the softness, the length. I quite like this one. And then we're just going to see if it can measure up to, which it does, the length of the back of the support. And we're going to take this from sort of halfway down the tail. It doesn't need to be too thick because we're doing a matchstick length, matchstick width, sorry. So it doesn't need to be too thick. There we go. I always take a little bit thicker because in these bucktails there's always the short feathers that you don't want, and then what you end up with is a matchstick width. You just keep brushing it out and them short feathers will come with. So there we go. So now we've got one nice piece that's approximately the length. It's a little bit short, but it's not the end of the world. I'm just going to trim off these tidy up bits of flash. I'm going to trim the ends so they're nice and neat, and then I'm going to tie that down, 1, 2, and then just pull, not too tight, and then just sort of split the bucktail a bit, so, and then get it on either side. Okay, just like that. That's how it's going to look underneath. And we can sort of manipulate it a little bit. There we go. Perfect. So, underbody, wing, done. Roll the fly right side up, tying a matchstick whips of lavender bucktail. Now, again, I don't have lavender bucktail. I didn't have American Beauty, so we can all make substitutions. I've got a purple, which is a little bit like lavender. On camera it's a little bit darker than what you think, but we haven't gone lavender and we haven't gone American Beauty, so I've got purple. But it's not a bad purple because it is still quite light. So, tiny matchstick wings with lavender bucktail, now lay blue grizzle on top of the flatwing. Okay, so we're just going to take a little bit, matchstick width, remember, of purple or lavender bucktail. That's fine. Again, take out the under short hairs that you don't need. And this isn't going to be anything other than a support for the blue bucktail that we're using. Now I'm just going to put another couple of wraps in there, just to bring the thread back a little bit, and then tie that in there. There we go. Just press it down, pull tight, and we're going to lose a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. There we go. Again, it's just as a support tail, that. Now we're starting to see the shape of the fly come together. Okay. Yeah, now lay blue grizzle on top and a chartreuse grizzle flatwing and an olive flatwing, all concave side down. So, chartreuse, so blue grizzle first. So we've got a nice blue one here. There we go, use that one. Doesn't say how long it needs to be in the book. Doesn't say where it needs to come over to any sort of reference point, so I'm just going to make it come over towards sort of halfway down and see how we get on. Again, get rid of all that marabou, snip off a bit of stem, and just, we might have to do our UV resin trick here, but the bucktail should help it sit nice. So let's just have a quick look. Yeah, no, that's nice. That sat nice straight away, that behaved itself. Good. And then trim. And then a chartreuse grizzle straight after it. Try find a nice bright one. Let's have a look. There we go. I think we've got one. Yep, got one. You can get quite picky with which feathers you use. When you're first starting, you just kind of use any, but the more you tie, the more you want them to be looking nice and neat and have the perfect length and the nice little taper. So again, strip off the marabou webby stuff, and I'm hoping that that's going to sit. Oh my god, that's so lovely. I'm surprising myself. And an olive. So we've used loads of feathers here. Have I got an olive? I've got an olive. Does it say olive or does it say olive grizzly? Just says olive. That's fine. So I've got an olive saltwater pack. Again, this is quite like a dark olive. This. I have got a golden olive, but I wanted to make it quite dark on top. So there's the olive, and I'm going to strip out. Oh yeah, that's nice. So just going to come right over the top with that. This might need a little bit of resin to get it to behave itself, because it's already starting to fight a little bit. But let's have a look. Nope, we're all good. We are all good. Just going to try and get it a bit more in the centre. There we go. Just centralise that feather a bit. Not nice and long, yeah. What I'm not a fan of, and this is no disrespect to any of the tyres, a lot of them have like a massive thread build up. I like to keep mine quite neat. Right, concave side down, that's flat, yep, down. Cheeks on either side of the fly, tying a sparse blend of white and lavender bucktail under jungle cock breast feather. So, let me just have a tidy up of me. Crap, I really should invest in a proper fly tying bin. Anyone who's seen me at the BFFI knows that I'm a messy fly tyer. Right, so we're going to have a little bit of a blend here. So I'm just going to use, I'm not going to use a ton, I'm just going to use a couple of fibres from each, the bucktail and the. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the purple and the white and just sort of roll it round in my fingers a bit, and that should blend it quite nice. Another way you can do it is just sort of stack it, where you just pick it up and put it on one another. So there's one cheek. I'm just going to trim the ends off, just trim the butts just so they're nice and neat, and it helps tie it in and keeps your tying points neat as well. So there's one cheek done. Stray stem there, and the exact same on the other side. There we go. So that's blended. Again, roll it around in your fingers a bit, take it out, put it back in, move it, stack it. There we go. Do the exact same thing again, just try and get the length the same on either side, and then just tie that in. There we go. Pull that tight. There we go. Get these feathers behaving themselves a bit, and I'm just going to start pulling down a little bit tighter now and just building a little head. Not massive. There we go. Just going to try and tidy these up a bit. So blue first, then chartreuse, then olive. There we go. Right. So then it said under jungle cock breast feather. So I've got my jungle cock. This is a real one. I don't use the. I try not to use the fake ones. I don't. Shoot me down, but I'm not a massive fan of them. I just think they look too fake. So I'm just going to try and find one that's nice and small, and it's because I like neatness in a fly, and because with these we are trying to replicate the original recipe. And if it's my own fly, if it's my own fishing fly, I'm not overly fussed about neatness. I just care. But when I'm tying like on YouTube or for shows or for other people, I do like to try and keep them as neat as possible. Right, so on either side there's one. Same again. Try and get when you're using two, try and use one as like a reference point. So like that. About there. And just take off what you don't need and tie that in. It's looking pretty good. Just manipulate it. You can. This is why I don't like tying really tight, because if you just do loose wraps and then you can manipulate it as you go before you commit. I like the look of that. So that's the cheeks done. Eyes, to finish the fly, lay jungle cock eyes on either side, take wraps from the white spot, which I'll show you, and the feather towards making it whip finish, lay on some hardener, and your fly is complete. So, jungle cock eyes. I'm running very low on jungle cock at the minute, but I'm going to take some quite big ones because it's quite a big fly, in all fairness. So natural jungle cock looks like that. You can use the fake ones. Jungle cock is getting increasingly hard to get and it's expensive, but I do like using it. So, but each to their own. In fact, I am going to get smaller ones because I've got smaller ones here that I picked up earlier. Nice, and I just think jungle cock is a nice touch. So there's one, smaller one, right from the base of the jungle cock this. And I'm just going to strip off the fluff and the fibres that I don't need. And it says in the book to tie in at the white bits. So we're going to tie in at the white bits, right in the middle of the white bits. There we go, there's one. There's 2. Now trim off the ends. In fact, I'm just going to do a couple more wraps over that, just over there. Build up a little bit of a head, not a massive head. Again, I don't like a massive head. And then just do a whip finish, 4 turns, and pull, and then do another 4, and then pull. And it says on the instructions, lay on hardener. Well, what I'm going to do first is just to blend this in a little bit. I'm going to colour some of the thread in black. I just think that gives it a little bit of a neater head. Black on top, white underneath. And then we're going to use a little bit of varnish. Not too much. Just going to varnish all around. It's quite messy, this. It can be anyway, using just the vineyards. And there we go. And that is as close to as an original recipe for the Joe Cordeiro's flat mac. There we go. So, Colours in the Current by Joe Cordeiro. Highly recommend it. I hope you enjoyed that. And that is the finished flatwing mackerel fly. There we go. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned where I'm going to do another smaller flatwing and a couple of deceivers. This is the start of a bit of a saltwater series that I'm doing on YouTube. Just fly tying tutorials. I'm going to try and keep it all from the basic sand eel flatwing to up to more stuff that's a bit like the flat mac. Alright, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.